Hi guys, and welcome back. Today I'm going to review a hybrid headphone amplifier of xDuoo, which is called TA20 Plus, which goes for $499 US. I have a lot to say about this one, probably a little bit more compared to what others had said about it. I'll be trying a bunch of tubes in this one. I'll be trying a bunch of headphones, dynamic and planar magnetic, also a few IEMs. I have a few nitpicks with this one, which I'll mention in a minute, but overall this is a very solid headphone amplifier, which is targeted mostly towards music lovers and not so much towards snobby audiophiles. So, let's check it out. Looks is of course a very subjective thing, but I do believe it adds a modern twist to the oldest breed of headphone amplifiers, which are hybrid or tube headphone amplifiers. We have an analog view meter, which of course doesn't add anything to the mix, it's not sounding better, but I kid you not, it improves my mood levels when I'm looking at that needle playing to the rhythm of the music. We have a decent elevation from the ground thanks to those tall rubber feet. We have plenty of ventilation holes, which should improve its heat dissipation. And we also have a detachable tube cage, and in case you have some kids running around the house like I do, or maybe some pets, then it's a better idea leaving that tube cage on. That will protect the tubes and all the members of your family. The body of the unit is made entirely from aluminum, and the only plastic piece that we have is this volume knob, otherwise everything is made from aluminum. So in truth, this is a high quality headphone amplifier that is built to pretty high standards, if you ask me. As for controls, I'm really glad seeing the golden standard of headphone amplifiers, the 4.4mm balanced output, the 4-pin XLR balanced output, and also the regular headphone jack. We have a volume wheel, which also changes the input of the amplifier, and on its back we have two pairs of RCA and a pair of XLR inputs, and also a pair of RCA outputs, just in case you want to use it as a preamplifier in a stereo setup. This isn't exactly a 100% tube amplifier, more like a hybrid amplifier that combines transistors with vacuum tubes, getting the advantages of both, so this is a hybrid amplifier. Hybrid amplifiers are usually faster sounding and more resolving compared to a regular tube amplifier, and if you like having a more technical sounding tube amp, then a hybrid amp is my recommendation. We have a transformer on top, which is later rectified by a 5Z 4P tube. We have two double triodes, and those are 12 AU7, and those are then followed by 8 transistors. So in truth, this is actually a fully balanced input to output headphone amplifier. It provides 2.6 watts per channel in 32 ohms via those two balanced outputs, and 2 watts per channel via that 1/4-inch headphone jack, so there is plenty of juice even for a few planar headphones, but more about that in a minute. We don't have a DA converter on board like it was the case with xDuoo TA22, but for me personally that is actually a plus. I personally like separates a little bit more because I can use much higher quality DACs, streamers and so on, but if you like having everything in a single unit, maybe it's a better idea going with that TA22. You can see the headphone rig, which I used to assess its performance, to my left, and I think that is the right time to hit some eardrums. Before telling you how it sounds, I have one small word of advice. We have input and output capacitors, we have filtering electrolytic caps, we have a big transformer, a rectifier, and two double triodes. What I want to say by this is that it will be giving you a better performance after about 50 hours of use. New vacuum tubes generally need heating and cooling hours to strengthen those cathode and anode elements, and please don't judge it in the first 50 hours of use, as it will get better from that point onwards. Sound-wise, this is one of those amplifiers that makes me recline my chair, pour me a whiskey, add more music to my playlist and simply enjoy every tune, every beat, because this one is actually quite musical sounding in a way. This is quite technical sounding as well, but it doesn't hold a candle to any of those topping or SMSL devices in the same price bracket. Those will be sounding faster, more resolving, having a darker background with IEMs, but when it comes to pure musical enjoyment, without analyzing the music, then this one does it so much better than any of those perfect measuring headphone amplifiers. The first thing that will be hitting you pretty hard is actually the bass slam. So this one will be kicking you very seriously in the lowest octaves. It's very physical, it's very visceral sounding in this regard. This is not the highest quality type of bass that I have experienced. It doesn't have an amazing grip and control in the lowest frequencies. It doesn't have a very layered type of bass. It's not a very high quality type of bass, especially with stock tubes, but in terms of sheer kick and impact, this is one of the most impressive, or maybe even the most impressive, that I have experienced exactly in this price point. The mid-range is also quite seducing. There is enough sweetness, there is some meat on the bone, there is some density in here. It's slightly elevated from the ground for sure, but not as much as bass information. The second thing which impressed me dearly was its liquidity that this amplifier has with every musical genre. It's like I'm no longer listening to PCM records, but to well-made DSD recordings. Everything is simply pouring easily and naturally into my eardrums. There's an order, there's cohesion. And when you have such a natural and liquid sounding headphone amplifier, you can forget about notions like digitus, brightness, aggressiveness. Those things will never happen with the TA20 Plus. Lastly, we have a decent layering, depth and soundstage, so pretty much on par with the TA22 and TA30, which I reviewed a while ago. The soundstage is not really the widest or the biggest, but it's certainly bigger compared to solid-state headphone amplifiers in the same price bracket. But what I believe is slightly more impressive than the soundstage and depth itself is actually note separation, as you can perceive bigger empty spaces in between the notes, especially when listening to live records. Having 2.6 watts of power per channel in 32 ohms, I was very curious if this one will drive the mighty Susvara, and unfortunately that didn't happen. I was easily arriving at around 95 dB volume-wise, which was very loud actually, but the sound was breaking up and the bass was heavily distorting, so this one won't work that well with HE6, with Susvara, with DCA Stealth, with Expanse, with any of those Abyss headphones. However, with something like Meze Elite, Kenton Rogner, RZH Charybdis and Phobos, I was arriving at around 50 out of 99 steps available, and that was already very loud, so I had plenty of headroom remaining on tap for some wild dynamic swings. When I moved to HD800S by Sennheiser, I was arriving at around 60 out of 99, but I was not surprised by that headroom. I was surprised by how great HD800S sounded with this amplifier. It altered their tonality, but in quite a good way. It was boosting that mid-bass quite a lot, the sub-bass and mid-range a little bit, and also the upper treble was no longer offensive. So HD800S worked really outstanding with this one, and basically any neutrally tuned headphones like Hyphamans, for example, Beyerdynamic, AKG, will work really great with this amplifier, and this one won't break the bank as well. The only things that you should avoid using with this amplifier would be ultra-sensitive loads like IEMs. And sure enough, there is a little bit of residual noise when using such super easy to drive loads. And it goes a little louder when you increase the volume, so the hiss goes up as well. However, with planar IEMs like 7 Hz Timeless, that was not really the case. Those were simply noiseless. I couldn't hear any kind of gremlins playing in the background, only when I was going very, very loud. At 150 dB per a single milliwatt of power at 33 ohms, my co-designed APOS Caspian are basically the easiest to drive desktop headphones that I have in my possession. These are very easy to drive, and to my surprise, this amplifier was not making them noisy, so again, it was simply dead silent with these headphones. And once the amplifier is fully burnt in, then the noise floor will get lower, so in truth, it should work just fine with both planar and dynamic headphones, including with planar IEMs. However, after a few years of use, you might observe that the noise floor is increasing in one channel, maybe in both channels, that is a sign that you should replace those tubes because they have a limited lifespan. Out of curiosity, I tried a matched pair of APOS Ray 12 AU7 vacuum tubes, which are selling for $180 US. And that slight flabbiness, that loss of control in the bass was no longer that apparent. Not only that, but the bass went faster, it was clearer, it was more layered. And while the APOS Ray tubes improved the resolution and the so-called detail retrieval, the speed and decay also felt more natural, expanding the sound even more. I believe that the bass quality actually improved the most. And finally, I could listen to some super fast electronica tunes. Unfortunately, I don't have a rectifier to try, a better rectifier in this amplifier, but with APOS Ray, it already became quite technical sounding, which is actually quite nice. Also having a nicer grip over headphone drivers. These are quite costly, but I do believe well worth the money if you want a more technical sounding headphone amplifier. Now for the not so great parts, and as I have mentioned before, the bass quantity is super impressive, it's very impactful, it kicks really hard in the bass, but quality-wise it's not so impressive, it's flabby, it's out of control, it's not that layered, it has a long trail in decay, and it's not really suitable for super fast tunes like electronica music. Resolution and dynamic range are decent enough for a hybrid amplifier, but it won't hold a candle to something like a Topping A90D, Topping A70 Pro, SMSL SP400, which will be revealing more inner details at the cost of being not as enjoyable and liquid sounding. So resolution as a whole gets a solid 7 out of 10 in the stock form and 8 out of 10 with those APOS Ray tubes installed. Lastly, I want to talk about the good parts and why I think this amplifier is worth its asking price. First and most important reason would be dynamics. So this one is really kicking hard in the bass. It's visceral, it's physical sounding in this regard, and it will be shaking your eardrums pretty hard. And if you like a really hard punch in the bass, then this one easily gets a 10 plus from me. The second reason would be the power output. So this one can drive even planar headphones, something that OTL amplifiers cannot do. For example, xDuoo has TA20 and TA20S, which are OTL amplifiers, and those cannot drive planar headphones like at all, but that is not really the case with this one. And lastly, the sound is just pouring down like a river. It's quite effortless, it's quite enjoyable, it's very easy to like, removing any traces of digitus and listening fatigue. And lastly, the sound was nicely breathing, having a decent amount of air in between the notes, so nothing would sound crowded or upfront on this amplifier. Wrapping up, I had lots of fun testing this one with all kinds of headphones, and not so much fun trying to write down impressions because it was always making me add more music to my playlist thanks to its organic sound signature. This is an easy to like amplifier, especially if you're a music lover and not a snobby audiophile. The technicalities are definitely there in decent doses, but if you want a faster, clearer and grippier sound, then I believe those APOS Ray tubes are becoming mandatory upgrades somewhere down the road. If you want a budget but still want to get some good vibes out of your neutrally tuned headphones like HiFiMan, Sennheiser and Beyerdynamic, then I believe this guy becomes a very easy recommendation. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed my review. Don't forget to subscribe if you like this video. My name is Sando and I'll see you very soon. Cheers!